that our creative expression is actually the most effective and efficient path for our spiritual and personal growth. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be the best at everything. That came from a deep wound. It came from a need to achieve, because achievement equaled love. And if I was second place, it meant that I was less worthy of love. I had to look deeply inward. It was not observing what was outside myself, it was observing what was inside myself. And that was when I really started to develop my voice as an artist and develop my understanding of the power of art and creativity to heal. Very few people really understand what creativity actually is. When we get better at creativity, the process of putting together new patterns, we get better at the process of expanding our consciousness. Why not improve the way you play the game? Because it actually opens up so much more possibility for what you can accomplish and feel and see happen in your life. The thing that separates those who are creating the lives that they really love versus those who are not is...
Hello people, welcome back to the podcast. Please hit that like, subscribe button. It helps me grow the channel and dedicate more time to this platform. This is Adam Roa. He's a creative, he's an artist, and he's an entrepreneur. And sometimes he puts them together. He has a program that actually does that very thing. The Artistic Entrepreneur. I would urge you to check that out. He's got some incredible things happening. And he's just on an authentic but abundant mission in life, and I have a lot of time with him. So enjoy the episode. He's a fantastic guy. You're going to learn a lot about creativity and how to call in more of what you truly want and how to actually do the things, implement the ideas, but understand yourself. And that is really at the root of this conversation, how to understand you. Enjoy the episode with Adam Roa. You've been posting and you've been creating content for like a decade, I think 7 years ago, and you were doing video on Instagram when it feels like, I don't know many people that were, but you were showing up in that way. And some of the like stuff that I'd love to play you on actually. I'd love to play some old Adam Roa content.
My first piece of content I remember recording was in 2013.
Oh, wow.
So it's been almost 12 years of putting out content. I would love to see. Which one did you pull up?
I think I want to play this one. See.
Presence.
Yeah.
Meaning when you allow yourself to become fully present and you breathe, you are now exercising the power that you have as a human being to shift your vibratory state into whatever you would like it to be. With every breath, feel gratitude for being able to breathe. And you can do this. You can find this state no matter how awful the world around you seems to be in that moment. You can find that state no matter what is going on in your life. That's the choice that you have. That's the power we have as human beings, the power of free will to choose how we experience the world around us. So try it. Take a breath and feel the gratitude. Into present.
Yeah, man. And there's so many nuggets.
I stand behind it. That's good
advice. It's like you'd say this stuff now. And I think one thing that I've felt with all of your content and listening, I mean, I watched the whole series of choose the
art of choosing love.
The art of choosing love
on YouTube.
Clearly didn't pay attention to the title.
Yeah, that was for people who don't know, that's my reality show that I made on YouTube.
Yeah, you're very impeccable with your word. Like I haven't found a video where you're not so much, and I want to like understand like that journey. I know you were in acting and you were doing that thing and producing, but like obviously that helped you show up on camera a bit. But like take us back to a time where like that wasn't so true for you, and like for all your content, it has a very similar energy. Even now, it's still this kind of flavor of of you listening and trusting and following. Like there's a voice and an intuition and a real like choosing of like love or like now or choosing presence, choosing what you want to bring to life and listen to what that could be. There's always been that flavor. So take us to a time where that wasn't the case. What was the early on journey that helped you kind of on that path?
Well, I feel as though my ability to um, speak fluidly, where because I've heard that before. They're like, you just talk, and the way that you talk makes sense. It's poetic, it's deep, and you don't prepare so much. And I think that there's two pieces to this that I feel are very important. The first one is that our mess becomes our message.
Hmm.
And so it was born out of a deep pain and wound. And that pain and that wound was being a very small kid, super tiny, very late to hit puberty. And so when I looked around me, everyone was bigger, faster, stronger. And so my mind and my ability to speak were where I felt I was powerful. And I knew I was smart. I knew I got good grades. I was validated for that. And so let me get attention. Let me get accolades. Let me have achievement through my mind and my voice. And so that was the wound that kickstarted a lot of that. And we, we can have those natural proclivities, but we have to water those seeds with actual practice and craft. And that happened. I was, I was in plays as a kid growing up, but I stopped when I got to high school. But I always was, I did like Toastmasters, which is a
Hmm.
public speaking um, in, training in high school. I did sort of like speech and debate competitions. It was in an organization called DECA when I was in high school. And then when I went to college, I started taking acting classes. And that was the way I started to nurture this natural ability I had that was born out of a wound. And
Hmm.
I think we all have that. If you were to look at some of your deepest wounds, they led to you developing things that could be superpowers if you were to water those seeds and really develop them.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Um, your biggest voids become your greatest values, right? I think Stefanos Stefandos said that once, and I really resonated. Yeah, I mean it's simple stuff, but it's finding like what's the language, what's the way that really resonates with these things. So when did the soul journey come in? Like when did that connection to your soul, your essence? You say creativity is your soul expressing itself. So like when did that language come in? When did you start to connect to that type of way of seeing the world, really?
Well, I moved out to Los Angeles to pursue an acting career when I graduated college. And to me, the acting career was more than just a career. Like acting saved my life. I was so emotionally shut down, completely shut down emotionally, that to find acting, it was the space where I felt safe enough to feel. And I was actually rewarded for my emotional capacity. And to me, the from the very beginning, that taught me that at least acting, but artistry, creativity was a pressure release valve to my emotional experience. And that was necessary. I needed it because I was so repressed and shut down from childhood. And still, for the first 10 years, really, of pursuing acting, it was still primarily about creating impact on others. It was still about if I could be an actor, I can make movies that cause people to feel. And that's so special. But it wasn't until I went through a breakup with a woman that I was with for 10 years. And I was so heartbroken and depressed and struggling that my art went from being for other people to I was now creating art to survive. My art and my creativity became deeply introspective. And I actually have two spoken word poetry albums on Spotify under my name. The first one is called Permission. And that album, all of the poems are about what I'm observing in the world. There's poems like Water is Life and Make America Think Again. And it's just observational poetry about what I was seeing.
Mm.
And my next album is called The Journey Back to You. And that album is my poetry that was written in the period I'm talking about, like after that breakup, where I had to look deeply inward. And so it was not observing what was outside myself, it was observing what was inside myself. And that was when I really started to develop my voice as an artist and develop my understanding of the power of art and creativity to heal. And now at this stage, it's developed into me believing that our creative expression is actually the most effective and efficient path for our spiritual and personal growth.
Hmm. What do you think people overlook when when it comes to creativity? What do you think people miss?
I think very few people really understand what creativity actually is.
Yeah, I think because it
What is creativity?
yeah, it's relative, I guess, to how anyone defines it. It's kind of like God, because we're all creating all the time, but then we have it as it exists in its own category also, which is like now I'm being creative.
Yeah. And so to me, creativity is the process of putting together patterns that you've never put together before.
Mm.
That's how I define it. And so when you look at a painter, that painter is putting together patterns of shapes and colors that they've never put together before in that way. When I write a poem, I'm putting together patterns of words in orders that I've never put together before. And personal development and consciousness is the same thing. When we look to expand our consciousness, what are we saying? We're looking to expand the patterns that we can see. And when we look at personal development, what are we doing? We're looking at the patterns that led to our current situation. We're going, what happened in my past that's causing me to feel this way in the present so that
Mm.
I can more consciously choose what I want to create in the future. And that's a process of creativity. It's a process of being able to spot patterns and put them together in new orders that you hadn't put together before. And so when we get better at creativity, the process of putting together new patterns, we get better at the process of expanding our consciousness. And that is the entire game here. To me, that's what this whole human journey is about, is the expansion of consciousness. And so why not improve the way you play the game? Why not get better at this thing? Because it actually opens up so much more possibility for what you can accomplish and feel and see happen in your life.
Mm. But when we open ourselves up to that, it can reveal a lot of painful things, all right? So, what are some precursors to doing that better that you've understood?
Well, I think that the number one, just like the number one thing is you got to start.
Yeah.
So many people just sit in the space of never doing it because they think it won't be perfect or they're afraid of being judged or fill in the blank. There's a million reasons they don't have time. They're not good enough. It's just a hobby. It's not realistic. What's the point? Okay. We all have that. And the thing that separates those who are creating the lives that they really love versus those who are not is the willingness to actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
There, like, you can go into all the variables about why or particular wounds or fears, but the core common denominator
Mm-hmm.
amongst all the people that you admire that are living lives that you would love to emulate, they're doing it. They're doing it. And there's no getting around that. There's no meditating in a cave until you hit a point where you're not going to have to take action. You will have to take action. And so that's the starting point. And that can look really simple. That can look like just picking up a, a guitar and starting to practice.
Mm-hmm.
It could look like starting to write poetry. It could look, before even starting to write poetry, it could look like just starting to journal on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
The starting point is the key, and there's no getting around that. Beyond that, I think that removing the pressure for the thing that you're learning, practicing, exploring, being curious about, it's important to remove the pressure for that thing to be the answer to all your problems. It's you don't
Yeah.
just start playing guitar because you need to become a professional musician. Don't start writing poetry because you need to become a world famous poet. You start doing the thing that brings you joy, that you genuinely have a curiosity about, and trust that that is your soul, God, spirit, whatever words you want to use, but you're following the breadcrumbs on this scavenger hunt for your soul. And who knows where it leads. But if you think that the first breadcrumb has to be the solution to everything, you're going to generally be disappointed and put a lot of pressure on something that could be fun otherwise.
Mm-hmm. I guess that for a lot of people, the motivation to do something different, the motivation to change something or bring something into your lives. They pick up the guitar is often predicated on that thing solving the problems. So,
100%.
so I always speak to people about like what is the motivation, and often it's pain, often it's discomfort of like staying where you currently are, and it's this kind of dance between not letting something go beyond the point of non-return, and actually like bringing something in that's going to help and being creative to actually change your reality.
Yeah, and also understanding that when people are thinking about changing their circumstances, generally they're so externally focused.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking at where they live, how much money they make, the relationship they're in. They're looking outside of themselves and saying, what can I do to change these things outside myself?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a different option, which is to look at it through the lens of what can I do to help me change the state inside myself? And trust that when my internal state has shifted, my external world will reflect that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we pick up the guitar, I'm looking at a guitar over here. That's why it keeps coming to my head. When we pick up the guitar, learning to play guitar will bring you joy. Having more joy in your life is going to cause you to show up differently in the world. Being a more joyful person in the world is going to attract new friends, new opportunities, new romantic partnerships to your life. And that is a very simplified way of talking about the law of attraction, law of magnetism, and the idea that you don't need to do the thing to change your external world. You do the thing to help you shift your inner world, and then your external world will shift.
Mm-hmm. Most people pick up the guitar to get girls, though, right? But that's because they want to
Yeah,
feel a certain way,
right.
and it all comes down to emotion and feeling. I think when you ask people why and go down that route of why, it's because I want to feel better. I want to feel different. Like they want their state to change. So next, really, how much is the mindset? And when you work with people, when you coach people, is that the biggest thing? Is it the state of where our mind's at and how to? Because it's not changing externally; it's changing what our fixed, what our beliefs, what stories, and where our mind is at,
Yeah.
and what we think is possible.
Your belief systems are shaping your entire life. If you have some aspect of your life right now that you do not like, that you wish was different, it is that way because of your belief systems. And so when I'm working with clients, the starting point for me is we have to identify what is the operating system that's at play. What are the beliefs that you hold that have created this reality around you? And once we can identify what those are, we can work to shift them and change them. But you can't change what you can't see. And therefore, awareness is the starting point. And awareness can be found in a lot of different ways, right? People listening to this podcast may be developing new awareness, hiring coaches, um, going and doing plant medicine ceremonies. There's a lot of ways for you to get new awareness. A journaling practice will help you develop new awareness. And the next step to that is then making new choices with that awareness. Because you can have all the awareness in the world about why you're not doing the thing or why you're stuck in those patterns. But unless you're willing to make new choices, you'll stay stuck in them.
Yeah, awareness without action is freeze. You can be stuck in a freeze state. So yeah,
100%.
how you how
Most people are.
yeah how are you doing that now? Like within the journey that you've gone on. Like is it really still important to you to keep coming aware of where you're still stuck, where you're still holding yourself back from the things that you do want? And that might be relationship. It might,
Absolutely.
you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's very few things that I would say are more important than that.
Mm.
I genuinely continue constantly. And if you were to look at um, how I do it, I work with a spiritual advisor, like a spiritual coach. I work with a business coach. I have friends around me that I regularly have conversations with about business or what we're moving through personally. I'm reading a book on creativity right now. I've listened to two different podcasts just today uh, around relationships was the focus, and one of them was around metabolic health. Um, I journaled and I had my journaling practice today. And this, in many ways, is also supporting me because I have a job, I have a career in which learning, growing, and speaking what I'm learning and growing is how um, I don't know, make money, I guess, or develop a following. Like this
Mm.
conversation, I'm getting better at discovering more in myself. You're asking me questions. You showed me a video that I made 10 years ago practically, and I'm I've had to think back to that journey, that process, which is helping me decipher things at a deeper level. And so I am constantly in that process. And I recognize that that's not what everyone wants. You don't need to be as hardcore about it as I am. I love it. But I do think that there should be some level of um, lifestyle design that is built around helping you hold up a mirror to see parts of yourself that you couldn't see otherwise.
Can it push you out of presence? That constant observation of your reality and potentially addiction because it's a dopamine hit when you learn something new about yourself or about the world. Like, does that ever push you out of being truly present or truly focusing on like going in on this project now, right? In the book, like knowing that you always want to keep on that path and keep checking your blind spots. And I saw a video you were posting on your stories about walking around Spain. It was a while ago, maybe a month ago, and you were just like different cultures and sampling different cultures and how people do things and just checking in on your own like um yeah, yeah, blind spot of what you might have in your daily practice that actually is limiting. Just being really open-minded to things. Like where does that ever get limiting for you in that sense? There was an older story as well, a video that you posted about being wrong, and like it's not necessarily about being open-minded. It's about actually, I love it when I'm being wrong because then I've learned something. So I guess the question within that is, does that ever affect your ability to just show up for work, and help support people?
Yeah, I think that anything can become a distraction. Anything can become unhealthy. You
Mm,
can die from drinking too much water, right? And so it is important to have checks and balances in your life, be very self-aware. I know that for me, I experienced some traumatic events early on in my life, and that caused me to feel very unsafe in my body. And so when I was moving through the world, I was constantly in a state of hyper vigilance and looking for threats. And I don't have a propensity towards anxiety, which is a fear of the future and what might happen, but I definitely have had a propensity towards depression and like holding on to the pain of the past. And again, our mess becomes our message and our pain becomes our purpose. And so my deep pain and wounds in the past that had me constantly looking in my past helped me become a really great coach because I've seen and analyzed so many different patterns and ways of thinking and had to rewrite so many different belief structures. However, there came a time where I realized I don't actually know how to let go of the past.
mm,
Like, I don't know how to move forward and not be lamenting the pain of the past. I'm carrying it and I don't know how to let it go. And it caused me to fall into a really deep depression. And so I often have to check myself and say, all right, I want to listen to a podcast right now. I could make the argument that that's always a great thing. I keep learning, I'm always learning. But maybe what's happening is I feel really not settled in my system right now. And I'm using that podcast to distract myself. And the healthiest thing for me to do would be to just sit in silence and just listen to my inner child that's screaming for some attention right now. And where that line is different for everyone, different every single day, different moment to moment, but developing the ability to spot it and see it and understand it is really important. And the last thing that I'll say around that is in current society, we have really rewarded people who are overworkers,
mhm.
people who are very ambitious, people who are constantly striving and grinding and willing to put in so many hours and do whatever it takes. We have rewarded that and we have painted those people as heroes and role models. And there are a lot of those people who are remembered for their success in one area. But if you were to look at their life holistically, you would see it came with massive sacrifices in other areas, usually in the area of their family and personal relationships.
Yeah, Tiger Woods being a big example of that. You wouldn't have wanted his childhood.
Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant was like that. Michael Jordan was like
Yeah.
that. Steve Jobs was like that. Like it is a very common thing because you don't become the greatest in any category
Mm.
living a very balanced life. It just doesn't it just doesn't happen. The people who become the greatest in any area, in any industry, are obsessive.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be the greatest basketball player of all time and compete with the Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryants of the world, you have to be obsessive. And that's why you hear about how crazy their work ethic is, how they were there at the gym before everyone. They were the last ones to leave. They put in twice as many shots. Well, guess what? That was time that they weren't doing another hobby. That was time they were not spending with their families. That was time that they were not with friends on vacation. And so it's important to really ground what is the goal?
Yeah.
What is the goal? And that's been something here. I'm writing my book here in Spain. And I've given myself a lot of spaciousness. It's funny because we were talking, I think, before we were recording, and I was sharing with you all the different things that I'm doing, right?
Mm.
I have I have an incubator program. I have another program. I have a live event happening in January. We put out a podcast every week and content every day and an email newsletter. Like this stuff is happening. And with all of that happening, I feel as if I'm in the most spacious time I've had in years.
Mm.
As crazy as that sounds, this is the most spacious it's been in years as I focus on the book. And in the spaciousness, I've been asking myself the question, what is truly important to me? Do I want to be legendary? Do I want to be the Michael Jordan of poetry or something? Because if so, I get to become obsessive with a goal because that's what it takes to get to that status. And the truth is that the answer is no, I don't.
Mm.
I want to be great at what I do, but I love having the holistic aspects. I want to be a very present father and husband. I want to go on snowboarding trips and go do vipassanas and plant medicine retreats and like take time off. I want to do those things. And that means that my desire to be the best of the best of the best is not there anymore because it was at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everyone should ask that question for themselves because it creates a lot of internal conflict when people set goals
Yeah.
that they don't actually want to put in the necessary ingredients to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah. And that can create so much tension because you know in your being that you you ain't going to sacrifice all these things a spacious morning. Like it's just you're not going to sacrifice them, but you have this idea in your head that you want to have all this success or all this money. It's like, well, do you want to go on the journey that it takes to get there? Answer for a lot of people is no. So yeah, back to defining your success. Like, what is success for you? What's success today, and how are you choosing that? I think it's radical and getting really clear on that. So where do you draw the
Yeah. I
line?
mean, I used to, yeah, if you had asked me, if you had asked for most of my life, I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be the best at everything. That came from a deep wound. It came from a need to achieve because achievement equaled love. And if I was second place, it meant that I was less worthy of love. If I didn't get straight A's, I was less worthy of love. And so um, I was always a high achiever. And when I healed that, I have changed my goals. My mindset has shifted. If you were to ask me, do you want to be a billionaire? I'd be happy to be a billionaire, but it's not a goal. I know some billionaires and I don't know any of them who got there without working an insane amount in for a very long time with extreme focus
Mm.
and like on one thing. They focused on something for so long. And one of my clients sold a very large tech company made enough money where he never has to work again in his life, ever. And what are we working on now is his the struggle that he's now facing because he was not present when his children were growing up and they needed him, and
Yeah.
now have some developmental issues from not having secure attachment, from not having that parental figure that was needed at that time. And that's what we're working on now. And so to me, the question everyone gets to ask themselves is like, okay, was that worth it? If you were given the option and you could see it in the future, hey, you're going to have to work your ass off for a decade and 70, 80-hour weeks for a decade, but then you will be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. You'll never have to work again and you can do whatever you want, but it will cost you the mental health of your family. It may cost you your marriage. It will cost you these things during that time, but then after those 10 years, you'll have the money and you can do whatever you want. Would you or would you not make that trade? And I think that the more that we can be very clear and honest with ourselves up front about what we truly want, we can be more intentional about it along the way. Because for me, I'm not willing to make that trade.
Mm.
I'm not. And so I've accepted that I probably won't ever be a billionaire. Maybe, like, it could happen. I get invitations to be a part of really cool opportunities, and maybe some of those pop off and like, wow, here we go.
Mm.
I'm an investor in this thing and it exited for a crazy amount and I get money and I invest well. Sure, maybe. But I also don't need it. Like, being a billionaire for me would be about ego. I don't understand what it is about $1 billion that I can't achieve with my other goals of being worth several tens of millions. That's a real goal for me.
Yeah, it's important to distinguish, because the one thing that's coming true here is that clarity, and that like, okay, let's do a thought experiment on, let's see this out, because the mindless approach is just to move towards something and think that's going to figure it all out, and that's actually scapegoating doing the work now because you feel it's not possible until you get to this place, but that's not going to do anything for your inability to show up for the person you love, or whatever it might be. So it's just, money's going to solve the problem, but it's just not. It's actually just you're using that as a reason to not do some work on yourself.
And most people set really big goals for no real reason.
Yeah.
No, like, do you know what I mean?
Well, I think they
Most
use
people
it as
just pick.
can use it as a reason to, like, I'll be happy when, and we know if you sit down and literally just play this out, it doesn't make any sense. But it's you
And
using it as a
that's the
reason.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. Why, what, how many people actually go back and question their goals?
Mm.
That's a really big one. What is the goal that you've set that you may not even realize you set? You know what I mean? Like, not the goal that you say, okay, by the end of the year, I want to do this. I'm talking about unconsciously as a kid or in your teenage years, you said, I'm going to be this, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
achieve this, I'm going to accomplish this. And you've set that and you've been following that unconsciously for decades. And often we have those goals that many times are unattainable because, as you said, we can hold on to the idea that we'll be happy when, and we know we'll never really get there.
Mm.
So we can kind of just keep believing that this thing will make us happy and therefore something will change at some point. It's not my responsibility. I just need to get here. And if we can step back and say, okay, most people's goals honestly have some aspect of money tied to them. What's the amount? What's the actual number
Mm.
that is your goal? And why is it your goal? Like, what is it? Most people, when I ask them, how much money would you like to make? Most people say a number that has million attached to it. They say something with million. And I find that very interesting, because most people, in my experience, say million because they have no idea what it feels like. Everyone understands thousand, right? Most people have had $1,000 at some point in time. And so if you said 999,000, there's a part of you that knows that when you had 1,000, it didn't change anything.
Mm.
So thousand isn't attached to changing anything. But million, well, I've never had a million. And I bet you a million would feel very different. So my goal is going to have million attached to it. But do you need $1 million? Why do you need the $1 million? What is it you're going to do with the $1 million? Do you need $1 million a year? Why? What is understanding your goals truly is so important, because when you understand your goal, where it's coming from, why you have it, you can stand behind it so firmly in integrity that now you can go after it with 100% of yourself, because every part of you is aligned with that goal. It's not just some flippant thing that you have from childhood.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a powerful piece. I do feel there's room to just pick a number to some extent. Because if you haven't got an idea of like what it is, an amount that you are calling in, like, where does that fit in? People that just like, I want more, I want to achieve more, I want to do this, I want that. But like having clarity on it's this number, because it really, as we know, like charge whatever price you want for your course. It's not really about the money. That's just the exchange which we get to, work with. You need to pick something, you know.
But how are you picking it? That's my point. Because
Mm.
I would recommend, sure, pick a number, but I would have you look at what is the lifestyle you want to lead?
Yeah.
How much money do you actually need to live that lifestyle? Right?
Hmm.
For example, what kind of house do you really need
Hmm.
to be happy? What kind of house do you
There's
need?
there's
Does
needs
it need
and
to
and
be
wants though, isn't there? Because this is something I've battled with for a few years. I'm kind of great we get a chance to talk about it. But when I could justify my needs to 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 if I have to justify them, I'm I haven't got very far like saying what do I need, because I don't actually need anything. I don't need a lot. But what do I want? Because my wants aren't justified by anyone. I don't need to justify a want. I can just say what I want. So where does that?
I have a friend who breaks this down and breaks it down into a need to have to survive,
Hmm.
a nice to have, and then a desire to have, a dream to have. There's three boxes. And so you do, though, you get three numbers. But I think most people, when you say that you don't need very much, that's true. And most people don't. But do you know what the actual number is? Because you need something. How much do you need? And when I say need, I don't mean living off of like packaged processed noodles and fast food. For me, a need, I need to be able to afford organic, high quality food. I'm a meat eater, so that means grass fed beef and organic vegetables. Okay, how much do I need in order to be able to feed myself for my health? That's a need. Shelter. Okay, what do I need? I need some kind of basic shelter. Depending on where I'm going to live, I could probably get by with a 2 bedroom. But because I'm looking at having a family, I know that I need at least one room for the baby, right? I need my bedroom with my partner, a room for the baby, and then just another room for an office or a guest. Like that's what I would say I'm going to say a need is just like
Mm.
that right there, because I don't feel like I would be able to operate raising my kid in like a studio apartment, like raising a family for
Yeah.
me, because I work from all the things, right? So like really base level, but it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to have an ocean view. It doesn't have to have any of those things. And then say, okay, what would the rent of that be? What would the cost of that be? And I start to figure these things out, like a gym membership. To me, that's a need. It's a non-negotiable. That is something that I absolutely feel is a necessity in
Mm-hmm.
my life for my mental health, for my physical health, in order for me to do my thing, is to be able to go and work out.
Uh-huh.
And so I don't talk about need through the same lens as, okay, I could survive on ramen noodles, and like living out of a $10 a night. Oh, you know what I mean? I'm not at that point, but
Uh-huh.
you get what I'm saying, like base level living. And then we add on the things that are nice to have, my supplements, right? Like that's the nice to have, would be adding on some supplements to that. What would be nice to have is the ability to hire like an assistant to support me. And then I go, okay, so what is the nice to have range?
Mm-hmm.
What do I need to make? What does that cost?
Have you worked all this out?
And
Or is-
I have in the past.
and now,
Yeah, yeah. What are my numbers now?
what are you calling in now? And what are you like? What's your life like right now? Like there's needs and wants, and because I know calling in a partner, calling in a family, like it's hot topic for you. And what does that look like? Are you making the space for that? Because I know you've been nomad for like how many years now? 7 years.
Yes, seven years. So it's a constant adjustment. And this is where I get back to the needs and wants thing, which is I think most people are setting their goals based off of their wants before they hit their needs. And
Yeah.
if you are not yet hitting your needs, that should be goal number one.
Mm.
Don't worry about the
Mhm.
wants and what that number is. Don't say, oh man, I really am setting the goal to make $1 million. If what you need is 100,000 and you haven't yet hit it,
Mhm. Yeah, and that
set
need
yourself
can
the $100,000 goal.
yeah, a need can be a reference also to what you want because what you need to get there is
Yeah, my
often
first,
in that
my
cat.
first, my first want. So my first need was to make enough money to pay off my credit card debt.
Mhm.
I had gotten into this credit card debt and I was making enough money to pay for my lifestyle, which was great, but I couldn't get out of my credit card debt. And so that was a first need, was to make that amount of money. And I think it was about 40,000. So I was like, I want to make $40,000 so I can pay off the like 20 something thousand in credit card debt and have a couple months rent ahead of time. So I feel like I could breathe. I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. 40,000. That was the first goal. And once I hit that, the next real goal became I want to be earning 20,000 a month. That was the next goal. How do I hit 20,000 a month? Okay, cool. And now that I've hit that, what's the next goal? All
Mm.
right, well, I want to buy a house. I know what my want is, and I'm in a place where all my needs are met, right? So I know that the house that I want is probably going to be somewhere in the $3 to $5 million range. That's what I want, is a $3 to $5 million home, depending on where I'm going to live, based on what I've seen, right? So I can project out, all right, cool. How much money do I get to make in order to pay my team, my overhead, hire the people I want to hire, keep up my lifestyle that I want to lead, and then be able to buy the house I want to buy, because that's my next big goal. And I do that math and I go, cool. I now have a number that I can hold in my head. So right now, just so you know, the number in my head that I'm moving towards is 10 million. I would like to make $10 million relatively quickly. We'll see how quickly. Like I don't have attachment to it. I could if I wanted to
I love it.
really strive to it, but I'd be willing to bet that if I set my mind to it,
Yeah.
I could make $10 million. I could make $10 million in the next 12 to 24 months. If that was my singular obsessive focus, How could I make as much money as possible to hit $10 million? 12 to 24 months. But do I want to be obsessive,
Mm.
or do I want to go travel Japan for 3 weeks and go snowboard and go do these things? And again, that's bringing us back to the balance. And so I'm just taking you into my mindset around
Mm.
it, because I feel like in this world of social media, everyone's saying set the biggest goals, be obsessive, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm saying set the goal that makes sense for you and aligns with how you want to live your life.
Yeah. Lifestyle has been something that I've focused on. Like, how do I want to live, and then move from that place and make decisions from that place. Where do I want to be? Do I want to be commuting? Do I want to be away? Do I want to be around? Do I want to like have community? Like, where do I want to live? The lifestyle has to come first. Okay. Lastly, let's just give people some small steps of how to get clarity on what they want. Because this is all well and good if you know what you want. And yes, wants versus needs with Adam Rower, amazing. But like, what are some small pieces, maybe just lastly, on how you step into what you want?
Follow your curiosity. That is my number one piece of advice.
Hmm.
I believe that there's so many people that get really hung up on the idea that they're supposed to know their purpose. They're supposed to know their life's calling. They're supposed to know what they really want at this stage. And I invite you to look at it as a process of discovery, a process by which you are learning what lights you up and discovering your purpose and your calling and your passions and your talents and your skills. I have the most viral poetry performance in history. It's been viewed over 250 million times. It's called You Are Who You've Been Looking For. And I didn't start performing poetry until well into my 30s.
Mm.
And that happened because I saw someone else do it and I thought I could do that.
Yeah.
I can do that. And I got curious and I wrote a poem and then I started doing it.
Mm.
And so, um, to me, when you look at now, I'm writing my first book of poetry. I'm known as a poet. I get invited to speak all around the world to perform my poetry. I never would have seen that my calling, my purpose would involve being a poet. It just never would have crossed my mind.
Mm.
But I followed the curiosity. And when you do that, you are going to uncover new avenues, new roads, new doors, and it's going to change what you want. I never would have wanted to write a book of poetry until I started doing poetry. I never would have started doing poetry if I hadn't allowed myself to get curious about it. And so, again, it's not something that you need to know now. Follow your curiosity, and you're going to discover more of what you actually want.
Beautiful, man. Nice place to leave it. You're relentless, bro. I love it. I love the journey you've been on, and you've got so much content out there, YouTube channel, and all of the things. You got a lot of poetry, and yeah, prolific creator. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming on. Where can people find you, and where do you want to direct people to? When's this book out that you're working on? Tell us about that.
Well, thank you, Chris. I really appreciate that you taking the time and having me on, and to everybody for listening to this. You can go to my Instagram. That's my primary platform, which is adam.roa, ROA. I also have a podcast called The Creative Path with Adam Roa, which is everywhere that podcasts are, including on my YouTube, where I have a bunch of videos and poetry, etc. And then I also have a website, adamroa.com, where you can find out more and subscribe to my email newsletter, where I send out sort of deeper insights into what I'm learning and exploring on a week to week basis.
Mm. What's your favorite podcast you've done on your creative path?
Ooh, that's a good question. Uh, I loved, let's see, which podcasts were my favorite? I always loved getting to talk to Blue of Earth. That was one of the original episodes. She's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And then James McCrae. who released a book on creativity, I really broke down with him what his creative process is. And he's a really prolific writer, and he creates memes that go super viral. And to hear about his morning ceremonies for his writing process was really cool for me. And
Wow.
so I love the podcast because it's breaking down what are these people actually doing to create what they create.
Yeah. Get Rick Rubin on. Can't wait for that episode.
Oh, that'd be so much fun.
I'm sure you will. All right. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.